In the legal profession, there's been a lot of concern and I would say hesitancy about embracing AI, particularly given the confidentiality concerns relating to clients. So there's sort of special closed AI models that are being used by firms. I do think it will be used more. It will actually transform the legal profession because there will be less work associated with certain repetitive tasks. And clients are using it, by the way, to evaluate billing and evaluate efficiencies to see which lawyers they want to hire, for example, among other things.
Can you recap the recent event you held?
We had Rob there, the Deputy Director of Enforcement for the CFTC, head of the enforcement in the Chicago office, and Rob Howell. And, I thought he said he was pretty candid, much more candid than you usually get from a CFTC official about what we can see going forward. And I think there's some takeaways that are really important. I mean, for one thing, he was very explicit that off-channel communications are on the way out. It was a wave. He agreed that it was the beginning of the end for off-channel, so there might be some cases trickling out. But if you haven't received an inquiry yet, you're likely not going to receive one. That was pretty substantial. We also talked very frankly about the squeeze that the CFTC is feeling right now. They are trying to do a lot in the crypto space. A good portion of their enforcement activity is in that space, and yet they had a full docket before then. And now what's happening is there's been fewer enforcement actions brought this year, and that's because they spent so much time working on things like FTX and Binance and some of the bigger crypto cases. And so going forward, he really seemed to suggest that they're going to be looking at SROs, state agencies, and others to try to sort of fill the gap there, because going forward, they're probably going to get spot crypto authority, and that means that they're going to have more to do, and they're not going to get more resources to do it with.
How did industry participants and the CFTC use off-channel communications?
There was a whole series of matters, really over the last couple of years, that dominated the CFTC's docket, with massive fines against banks, trading firms, FCMs, essentially saying because, let's say associated persons and others at your firm are using WhatsApp, text messages, Signal, and other types of communications, that means you need to pay $20 million, $100 million, even more than that in fines. The SEC was going first with that, hitting some of the biggest market participants with massive fines. The CFTC was willingly following on, and it meant that a huge percentage of their focus was on those cases. And what it meant was we weren't seeing spoofing cases, wash trading cases. A lot of the sort of the metals and other types of fraud cases that we're used to seeing, we're seeing less of those. And we're seeing all of the enforcement, division of enforcement energy focused on chasing down traders and others for using text messages to set up business lunches. And now I think we're moving past that, it sounds like.
Will the CFTC get the resources to expand its crypto enforcement?
I think the chances are slim to none that they get more resources. I mean, the Trump administration is going to be all about slashing regulation, slashing government oversight, not increasing it. And so I actually think part of the reason that the CFTC and not the SEC is going to get authority over spot crypto is precisely because the CFTC has a smaller budget, is more tightly controlled by the committee that oversees it, in this case the Ag Committee, is less partisan and has been less aggressive on the enforcement side. So I think what's going to happen is they're going to have more to do. They'll have, if anything, less resources to do it with. And what that really means, I think, for folks who are watching this, is that they're probably going to see less activity from the CFTC. They'll see maybe more rulemaking, but less enforcement matters. And they'll potentially see SROs stepping up to fill the void there.
What did you guys discuss about prediction markets?
That's been really highly publicized. The CFTC actually tried to stop Kalshi from, having his prediction market sold to U.S. persons before the election, and they failed. The court refused to stop them, refused to enjoin them. That was a very substantial loss for the commission. I think a loss of credibility on their end, and it really meant Kalshi ended up skyrocketing in popularity. They were number one on the App Store. beating out TikTok and a lot of the other popular favorites. And I think that in many ways they were more accurate than some of the pollsters this year in predicting. And I think they're here to stay. Now, will they be a real option for market participants who need to hedge risk related to political entities? You know, as you have suggested to me when we spoke at the event, John, maybe there isn't enough liquidity for that to occur. But I do think the CFTC was dealt a blow there, and under the Trump administration, I expect them to be more permissive, not less, given Elon Musk's involvement and others regarding prediction markets going forward.
What are your thoughts on AI?
We're starting to see AI used, first of all, just for client communications, used to, at times, for example, input, certain sorts of, concerning communications to try to get an output. It's going to create over time, John, it's going to create, I'd say, more compliance concerns. Because first of all, you're inputting potentially data and you don't know who or what is responsible for the output. And ultimately, a regulator is going to hold you responsible for what AI is doing. So there's also the issue of phantom results, right? Essentially imagined results that come out of AI. So I think it's something that is being embraced by a lot of and used by folks in the industry, but I think you have to be careful about how you use it.
What other topics were covered at the event?
One thing that I think we really focused on was how enforcement is going to be changing in the new administration. And part of that is our current director of enforcement is really focused on getting admissions from market participants. Rob was clear that he thinks that will end as well. On January 20th. That's, I think, a significant change. At times, the commission has been highly aggressive in its use of the recklessness standard with relation to market manipulation. That now that the Dodd-Frank Act allows that to be brought, I don't think we're going to see any of that in the next 4 years. We're going to really see, I think, a focus on retail investors. Sanctions now might be an issue because the Trump administration is very focused on sanctions and tariffs and so on. But definitely, it's going to be a change for the commission and a change in direction from where we are now. Of course, determined by who the next chair is going to be.
Was the SEC discussed at all?
Yes, because the SEC has taken such an aggressive position regarding crypto. They've really driven a lot of that conversation, and I think are leading the CFTC now to have a bigger role. If you look, John, over the last 3 or 4 years in the Biden administration, the SEC has gone after not just the sort of, I would say, questionable crypto, potentially fraudulent crypto. They've gone after some of the biggest names in crypto, and you literally not only have had sort of those name brands have highly publicized standoffs at the CFTC like Coinbase, but you also seen, let's say, Crypto.com went forward and did their own declaratory relief action suing the SEC. So a big fight about these entities that want to be regulated, that want to have a regulatory framework, that want to comply. And I think that really led us to where we're at now, where the SEC has got a bad name. Musk is not, who is so influential in the Trump administration, not happy with the SEC, never was. But crypto put a lot of money in this election, and that money was behind Trump so that they could get a new regulatory framework and so they could get the CFTC in charge of it. And that's going to have a ripple effect through the futures industry as well, because now we have a regulator that's going to be focused elsewhere instead of focused on the issues that we're traditionally having them focused on here.